I took 7 pictures before they noticed me. David jumped out of bed, shouting, "Give me that damn camera." I pulled out the 911, a one that was hidden in my belt, and pointed it at him. He stopped, grinned, and said, "You have a lot of guts." I aimed my machine gun at his left knee and pulled the trigger. He fell screaming in pain. "Lord God," said my father, "you shot your own brother?" "The only reason I won't shoot you is because I don't want to deprive Mom of the pleasure of cutting you off from your household." Sonia, my wife of 9 years, clung to the pillow and cried, "Don't kill me, please don't kill me." I ignored her and told my father, "I don't know what pisses me off more, the fact that you had sex with my wife, or the fact that you had special sex with her that she never allowed me to do." Naturally, I quit. "We'll have to change the sign on the building from Dawson and Sons to Dawson and Son, though maybe just Dawson if this idiot bleeds to death. I don't see anyone rushing to call 911 to help him." I turned to leave and he said, "Where are you going?" "To your house to show the pictures to your mom." "Wait, Bobby, we need to talk." "You may need to talk, but I absolutely don't need to listen to you." When I left the house, he shouted, "Damn it, Bobby, talk to me." I ignored him, and as I walked to the car, I fired the 1911 at the front and rear right tires of his car. I didn't want him to rush ahead of me to my mother. I drove 2 blocks, then pulled over to the side of the road and called my mom. I would prefer to give her the photos in person, but when 911 is called for David, the police will intervene, and they will most likely be told that I can be found at my parents' place. When she responded, I told her I was emailing her some photos, and she should see them before Dad gets home. She had questions, and I said I would call back later. I looked at my watch and saw that I still had an hour before the bank closed. On the way to the bank, I thought about what had happened. I returned a day early from a business trip to find my father's car parked in front of my house. I didn't suspect anything because I always asked him to check on Sonia when I left to make sure she was okay and to see if she needed anything. Of course, when I asked him to see if she needed anything, I didn't mean sex. In any case, as soon as I entered the house, what I heard from the bedroom made it clear what was happening there. I went into the office, opened the bottom drawer of my desk, took out a lockbox, opened it, took out a .45 and put it in my belt in case I needed it. I took out my phone, turned on the camera, and went into the bedroom. Sonia delivered David's pleasure while my father had sex with her. I finally understood why I was the only son who was sent on business trips, but David always stayed home. When I got to the bank, I closed all of our accounts and cashed in the 6 certificates of deposit that were in the safe deposit box. When I left the bank, I had a little over $18,000. I drove across town to the bank where the company had accounts and where I was a subscriber. I withdrew $15,000. I considered it a severance package, although some might call it embezzlement, but I wasn't going to worry about embezzlement when I was no doubt already wanted for assault with a weapon. My last call before leaving town was to David's wife, Cindy. I caught her leaving the house to go to the hospital to see David. As soon as she heard my voice, she said, "Bob, what's going on? Your dad just called and said you shot Dave." I came back from a business trip and found him having sex with Sonia. I took photos, and when he tried to take the camera from me, I shot him in the leg. I am sending the photos to your email. I'm sorry you had to find out about it like that, but I thought you should know. Take care of yourself, honey. I hung up, and 5 minutes later, I drove past the city limits sign and headed west. After about 5 miles, I stopped and parked. I didn't know if my phone could be tracked, so I took out the battery just in case. I could have just thrown it away, I guess, but I didn't want to lose the photos. I'll buy a disposable one later. I pulled away from the side of the road and continued on my way, trying to put as many miles between me and Michigan as possible. 2 days of driving brought me to Colorado. I checked into a motel just outside of Denver and, out of curiosity, called home on the track phone I bought at Walmart in Kansas. It was 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so my father, unless my mother killed him, had to be at work. She answered the third call. Hello. Hi, Mom. Bob, where are you? I decided to distract her a little, since the police were probably looking for me, and said, almost made it to New York. Why are you going to New York? Trying to get away from Sonia, David, and Dad. Did you have to shoot David? He'll never walk properly again. He's lucky I didn't kill him. I thought Cindy deserved that treat. She didn't kill him, but she kicked him out of the house. It was mean of you to send her those photos. It wasn't mean. I thought she should know that her husband was a scoundrel. That's the same reason I sent them to you. It was a waste of effort on your part. I already knew that he was a scoundrel. I knew that he cheated sometimes, but I turned a blind eye to it for the sake of saving the family. But Sonia, I couldn't ignore that. I kicked him out the next day too. Today, I contacted a lawyer to file for divorce. You need to return. Ultimately, I will stay with the business, and I will need your help in managing it. Why did you decide that? My father's inheritance was used to create a business. My lawyer says I'll get 60 to 65%, and that will give me control. I'll need your help. Are you going to run it like Dawson and Sons, or like Dawson and Son with my son? Don't be like that, Bob. Dave is my son, just like you. That means he'll be there, and that means I won't. If I'm near him, I'll want to punch him. You need to call Sonia. She needs to talk to you. But I don't want to talk to her, so I'll say no. You'll still have to do it. Counseling is almost always ordered in a divorce, and you'll have to talk to her. What kind of divorce? I just left her. I'm not going to spend money on a lawyer. Someday this girl of easy virtue will want to be free again, even if she gets a divorce and pays for it. Seriously, Bob, do you have to call her bad names? Why not? That's what she is. What else can you call a married woman having sex with two men on a bed that her husband bought? An easy girl is the softest thing I could call her. I just called to let you know that I'm fine, and I'll try to do this at least once a week. We'll talk later. Love you. Nothing was said about the $15,000 I withdrew from the company account, so I guess they haven't noticed it yet. I spent a week in Denver exploring the area, but even though I liked it there and was drawn to the mountains, I decided it was too early to settle in one place. We need to keep moving to make it harder to find them. I stopped in Castle Rock and had lunch at a place called Trikakai's, and while I was there, I called my mom to let her know I was okay. She didn't answer, and on a whim, I called the business. Good morning. Thank you for calling Dawson and Sons. How can I direct your call? Good morning, Glenda. Is Mommy there? Bobby, where the hell are you? Everything is falling apart here. You need to go back. I don't think so. Is Mom there? Connecting. Bob. Good morning, Mom. How's New York? Behind me. I didn't like it there. I'm in Georgia now, in a little town called Dawson, having breakfast at a nice restaurant called Town and Country, seriously thinking about settling here. You need to go home. I don't think so. I need time to recover from what happened. If I came back now, I would probably kill my father and brother if I were near them. It will take me time to start thinking about returning. Will you at least call Sonia and talk to her? I'm really worried about her. She's in a complete mess right now. It's her fault. Let her figure it out. I'm serious, Bob. I'm afraid she might do something to herself. Like what? Suicide. I don't rule it out. Well, from my point of view, it will be faster and cheaper than a divorce. It's cruel. Cruel? Try to come home from a business trip and find your wife in bed with two men doing things with them that she never did with you. She's lucky I didn't shoot her after I shot David. She's the one for me who is dead, and I would ask you to never mention her name again. I didn't raise. Mom, have you forgotten who the two men she slept with were? I'll call you later. I hung up and almost threw my phone at the wall. I just couldn't believe that under such circumstances she was pushing me towards Sonia. I left Castle Rock and headed south on I-25. I still didn't know where I was going, but just driving was enough. Around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I stopped at a truck stop for gas and something to eat. I got gas and parked at the end of the lot. Before I could get out of the car, there was a knock on the window and I saw a girl standing there. I rolled down the window and asked, "Yes?" She looked to the right and to the left, but did not look at my face. I felt that she wanted to say something, but could not make up her mind. While I was waiting for her to speak, I looked at her and saw a very pretty young woman, probably in her early 20s. She found the strength to speak. "This is hard for me, mister, but I'm hungry. I haven't eaten in 2 days and I'm in pain. I can please you for $20 to buy myself some food." One thing was clear. She wasn't a professional if she only asked for 20 for sex. I pressed the button to raise the window, and I think I saw the desperation on her face as she probably thought I was refusing. I got out of the car, locked it, and said, "Come on, I'll feed you." I offered her my hand, and after some hesitation, she took it and said, "I'm Bob, and you?" "Maggie, Maggie Tommen." Nothing more was said until we were inside and seated at the table. I know it's none of my business, but what on earth brings Maggie Tommen to a truck stop looking for food? Before she could say anything, the waitress came to take our order and Maggie ordered a burger and fries. "This is not food. It will only satisfy your hunger for a couple of hours. Bring us 8 ounces of steak with a side dish." After the waitress left, I asked Maggie her story again. She hesitated, but I still pulled it out of her. She was running away from her cruel stepfather and drunken mother. Her stepfather openly stated that he intended to have sex with her, and her mother was always too drunk or high on something to do anything. So one night, when her mother and stepfather fell asleep, she took all the money from her stepfather's wallet and purse and ran away. She had a sister in Houston, so with only the clothes she had on her and the money she had taken, she bought a bus ticket to Denver, intending to take the Amtrak train from there to Houston. She fell asleep on the bus and didn't wake up until she got to Denver. When she woke up, she discovered that her purse was missing. Someone stole her and got off the bus before the driver noticed her and woke her up. She decided that she would hitchhike to Houston. When she finished, I asked her why he kept saying he was going to do it and didn't. He would go to jail for having sex with me. "How old are you?" "I turned 18 the day I ran away." 18? I thought you were 22 or 3. Why didn't you tell him to leave you alone or you'd call the police?" I said, and he just laughed. He said it would be a word against word situation, and my mother would support him because if she didn't, he would stop buying her illegal substances. I didn't know whether she supported him or not. She was not going to risk it. Our dishes arrived, and we ate in silence. She refused dessert and said, "We need to go to your car and fulfill my end of the deal so I can get back to hitchhiking." While I was eating, I thought about her plight and came to a decision. I was in no hurry. I was just driving to get away from what happened at home. I left a tip for the waitress, paid at the register, and we headed to my car. I opened the door for her, then walked around and sat down in my seat, and when the door closed, she said, "I don't know if I'll be good at this because I've never done it before." "It doesn't matter. Today is your lucky day. You chose the right guy to approach. I won't take advantage of the situation. If I did, I'd feel like a bastard, so your first luck is that I won't accept your proposal. Your second lucky thing is I'm going to Houston, so you already have transportation." I started the car. I'd heard stories about hitchhikers who sometimes stole their drivers' cars, but I wasn't worried about riding with Maggie. If I was wrong about her youth and innocence, and she pulled a knife on me or something, the 1911 would be in the door pocket, and all I would have to do is put my left hand down and pull it out. I drove until 8 p.m., then stopped at a truck stop to get gas. I asked Maggie if she was hungry, and she said yes, so we went inside to get something to eat. While we were waiting for food, something occurred to me. "Have you called your sister yet?" "No. I was going to call her when I got to Denver, but my phone was in my purse." I took my phone out of my pocket and handed it to her. "Call her." To give Maggie some privacy, I went to the restroom and then walked around the store, buying a road atlas just in case. When I returned to the table, the food was already on the table and Maggie had finished her call. When I sat down, I asked, "Is everything okay?" She's really happy to see me. She said Mom called her and asked if she'd heard from me. She said Mom sounded sober this time. She told Katie if she heard from me, for me to call her. I pointed to the phone lying on the table and said, "Come on. I'm not ready yet. Maybe in a couple of days." When we got back on the road, Maggie asked, "You know my story. What's yours?" I told her my story. "Your father and your brother, and you didn't kill them. What did your wife say?" I didn't ask. He just left. Maybe she was coerced or blackmailed. She wasn't forced. You could tell by her behavior while I was taking the photos, and if she was being blackmailed about something, she could have told me and we could have worked it out. I still think you need to know the reason. Maybe someday, but I'm not ready right now. I was staying at the Days Inn and was going to get 2 rooms, but Maggie said she didn't want to be alone in the room, so I got a twin room. In the room she said she needed to take a shower, so while she went to the bathroom, I undressed and went to bed. When she came out of the bathroom, she looked at the other bed and then climbed in with me. I slept naked, and although she may have felt the need to be close to someone, I wasn't sure that someone had to be me. I didn't think this was a good idea. "Another bed for you." "I don't want to be there. I want to be here." She touched me and her hand began to move down my body. I grabbed her wrist and said, "No." "But I want to. I owe you." "No, you shouldn't. I won't take advantage of you. You were in pain and despair when you made that offer. I was glad to help. I'm not doing this to pay off a debt. I want to do this to thank you for your kindness. I want to do this because I want to. Is that okay?" I'm no saint, and she was a sexy girl, and I sure as hell wasn't supposed to be faithful to Sonia anymore, so I let go of Maggie's wrist. She took this as agreement, and her hand continued down my body. Then she gave pleasure to me, and I to her. I settled down next to her, she snuggled up to me, and we fell asleep. I woke up to Maggie pleasuring me. After what happened last night, I didn't see the point in pushing her away. I closed my eyes and enjoyed the sensations. Then we started having sex. This was her first time. It's 10 hours away from Houston, and if we leave now, we can get to your sister by 7 or 8 in the evening. I'm in no rush. I'd rather practice what we did a little more while it's fresh in my mind. When I get to my sister, I don't know how long it will be before I can do it again. When she put it that way, a little voice in my head said, "You better take advantage of it, Robert. It may be a long time before you can do it again." We stayed until checkout time as she wanted to try different positions and do some things she had seen in an adult movie. I took the opportunity to try something that I had always wanted, but Sonia never allowed. Did I feel guilty taking advantage of her innocence? Not a bit. In my opinion, she needed to find out whether she liked it or not, so why not give her that experience? Besides, I needed to find out if I liked it. She liked it, and so did I. She wanted to do it again, but I had to say no. I was exhausted. We had a snack and hit the road again. Due to a late start, we didn't make it to Houston before midnight, so I decided to stop for the night around 9, rather than show up at Sister Maggie's at 2 in the morning. Of course, Maggie wanted to practice what she had learned. In the morning, she wanted to start the day right, and as a result, we left only at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. At 4 o'clock in the evening, we arrived at her sister's house. When I made no attempt to get out of the car, she asked, "Aren't you going?" The truth is that I began to become attached to this young woman, but under the circumstances, I did not see a future for us, so I said, "I would like to, but I can't. Our games have put me too far behind schedule, so I need to go." I saw the disappointment on her face, and she said, "Then I guess this is goodbye." She leaned over, kissed me, said, "Thank you for everything," lingered for a moment, and then with a big smile on her face added, "And I really mean everything," and got out of the car. I watched her walk towards the door, and when she turned around, she waved at me and walked inside. I found a motel and checked in. There was an IHOP across the street, and as I ate, I thought, "What now, Robert?" After some thought, I decided that since I was in Texas, the Alamo was worth a look. When I got back to my room, I looked at the road atlas I bought at the truck stop and found directions to San Antonio. It's only 197 miles from Houston, so it takes about 3 hours. About half an hour from Columbus, I saw a car on the side of the road and a man and woman standing next to it. The man raised his thumb in a hitchhiker's gesture, and I stopped. He opened the door and said, "My car is broken, and we need to drive to the nearest town to find someone who can fix it." "Well, sit down." He sat in front of me, and the woman sat in the back seat. We introduced ourselves to each other. His name was Ray, and the woman in the back seat was Sarah. We drove about half a mile when I heard a click and saw a man holding a switchblade pointed at me. "Don't do anything stupid, and nothing will happen to you. Turn left onto that dirt road." I lowered my left hand to the door pocket to take the .45 and said, "I don't think so." "Hey man, I don't want to hurt you. I just want your money and your car." I had the Colt in my hand, but before I could raise it and point it at him, the woman in the back seat, using the straps of her bag as a garrote, threw them around his neck and pulled him back sharply. He dropped the knife and tried to put his fingers under the straps to loosen them, but they were too tight. I threw the gun back into the door pocket and turned onto the dirt road, drove about 100 feet and pulled over to the side of the road. I picked up the knife, got out of the car, walked around it, and opened the passenger door. I told the woman she could let him go, and she returned her bag. The man, who by then was unconscious, fell forward, and I pulled him out of the car and threw him to the ground. I checked his pulse, and he was alive. I took off his clothes, rolled him into a ditch that ran along the road, and threw his clothes into the trunk of the car. I asked Sarah if she wanted to move forward. "You're not going to leave me here?" "Why should I do this?" "I don't know. Maybe because I was with him." "You may have been, but you took my side, so why would I throw you out?" She shrugged and moved in front of me. I turned the car around, turned left at the intersection, and we drove to San Antonio. As soon as we started driving, I said, "I assume you weren't in a relationship with him." "I only knew him for about an hour. My car broke down, and he saw me standing with the hood up and stopped to offer help. He turned out to be quite nasty and made it clear that I had to give myself to him in exchange for a ride. I was going to pretend until he stopped to eat or get gas, and then I was going to run away from him. When he did what he did, I didn't want to be a part of it, so that's why I used the straps." "An hour ago. Why didn't he drop you off at Waverly so you could call a tow truck and fix the car?" "It wasn't my car, and I didn't care what happened to it." I raised an eyebrow at that, and she said, "It was my husband's company car, and I have no doubt he had already reported it stolen, so I planned to leave it at the airport in San Antonio and catch a plane to San Antonio. Diego." She saw the look on my face and said, "I think I should tell you the whole story. I caught my husband cheating. To get back at him, I slept with his brother and then told him about it. She said that now we are even, and he will either cheat on me, or I will sleep with every guy when he cheats on me. He called me an easy girl and said that cheating is normal for men, but not for married women." "Did he really say that?" "He said that men are programmed to reproduce, and women are programmed to raise a family. Nature, as he put it. Then he said that he was leaving me because he would not live with a cheater. That night, when he fell asleep, I took the keys and left the car. I spent the night in the motel, and in the morning, when the bank opened, I withdrew all the money from the accounts. Then I hit the road until the car broke down, and here I am." I laughed heartily. "What's so funny?" "I'm laughing at the situation. You and I are almost perfect for each other." "In what sense?" I told her my story, how I ended up on the road and in a situation where I could pick her up. "Oh my, what are the chances of that happening? I'm guessing you're not going to put up with her." Not a chance. She was silent for a few moments, and then said, I wonder why people like that even get married. If they're going to have sex, why don't they just stay single? No idea. I didn't stay to ask. I don't know how it started or how long it lasted, and I didn't care. I was so annoyed by it that I just turned around and left. I don't even want to think about it. So what? Let's change the subject. What's in San Diego? Most of my family. I'll have a place to stay until I get back on my feet. Are you in a hurry to get there? Why do you ask? You mentioned you were going to fly when you get to San Antonio. Flying is faster than ground transportation, so I'm asking if you're in a hurry to get there or if you don't care how long it takes to get there as long as you get there. It's important to me just to get there. Why do you ask? I explained my thought process about the trip. I'm going to San Antonio to see the Alamo, and then I don't have a specific destination. You mentioned San Diego, and I've never been there, so why not? I'll save on airfare. Mom knows I'm coming, but I didn't tell her my arrival time. Why not? I'm in. When we got to San Antonio, we received directions to the Alamo. We stopped for lunch and then went on a tour. Afterwards, we explored the Riverwalk. I went to a bookstore and bought a road atlas, and while we were having dinner, I studied it to find the best route into San Diego. Almost 1,500 miles, so I guess 2.5 days on the road. The book says 24 hours, but that's non-stop. Since I'm not in a hurry, I usually ride 600 to 700 miles a day. The question is, are we leaving now? And drive 3 to 4 hours before stopping for the night or wait until the morning? Like you, I'm in no hurry. Morning will come. When we finished eating, I started looking for a motel. I pulled up to the Super 8 motel and asked, would you be fine with private rooms or one room with 2 beds? I think one room with 1 bed, she said with a sly smile. I don't think I repaid my soon-to-be ex-husband enough. I smiled broadly at her and said, you got it. Her husband was an idiot for cheating on her. She was fantastic, almost insatiable, and once she started, she didn't want to stop. She completely squeezed me out. We fell asleep cuddling, but she wasn't done with me. When I woke up in the morning, I thought I was waking up from a wet dream, but I wasn't. Sarah woke me up, giving me pleasure. When she saw that I was awake, she said, you need to start the day right, and then we had sex. I collapsed on the bed next to her and said, good morning. Not good morning, lover, great morning. Let's take a shower and have breakfast. You go first. If we go together, we might never leave the room. So what? Weren't you the one who said you weren't in a hurry? Good point, I said, standing up and following her into the shower. We never made it to breakfast and had to settle for lunch, a very late lunch. It took 6 days to travel 1,500 miles to San Diego. We arrived at 6 o'clock on Saturday evening, and I asked her address. Not tonight, she said. I want one more night with you before you leave me. I'll call my mom and tell her I'll come over tomorrow. I checked into the motel, and as soon as we got into the room, she used the phone to call her mother. To give her some privacy, I went to take a shower while she talked. I wasn't the least bit surprised when she joined me in the shower. I washed her back, and she washed mine before things become predictable. It was 6 in the evening when we arrived at her mother's house. She looked at me with a sad look and said, I would like to invite you in, but under the circumstances it would be too awkward. When I spoke to my mother, she said that Bert was here. According to her, he came to beg me to come in. Him back. Are you going to do this? I really don't know. I've loved this idiot. Since the 7th grade. I only left because he said he wouldn't live with a cheater and was going to get a divorce. I'll tell you one thing, if you want me to stay in the car, I'll stay. Honestly, it's tempting, but what happened to me is still too fresh for me to make such decisions. She handed me a piece of paper. This is my number, in case you want to call. She leaned over, kissed me passionately, and got out of the car. I was very tempted to call her back, but instead I put the car in gear and drove off. I checked into the motel and then went to the Village Inn restaurant. I grabbed a bite to eat and then headed back to the motel. I decided to call my mom and let her know that I was okay. The phone rang 4 times before it was picked up. Hello? It was my father's voice, so I passed out. I sat and looked at the phone in my hand and wondered what was going on. Mom said she kicked him out. Suddenly, I decided to call Cindy. Hello? Hi, Cindy, it's Bob. Bob? Where are you? In Dawson, Georgia. I'm calling to see what's going on there. I called home to check on my mom, but my dad answered the phone. Last I heard, she kicked him out. She did it. Your dad wanted to get his stuff out of the house and garage, so your mom gave him the weekend to do it. She stayed with your aunt, Mildred, for the weekend. How are you doing? I hired a lawyer and filed for divorce. Dave said he would fight, and I told him to spend the money. I told him he could slow it down, but not stop it. You knew he and your father moved in with Sonia when your mom and I kicked them out, right? I didn't know, but I don't care. They're all trash, and they deserve each other. Amen to that. When are you coming home? I won't go back. I don't think I'll like prison. Why do you think so? It must be illegal to shoot someone even if it doesn't kill them. Why do you think so? Because I shot David. No, I didn't shoot. Of course he shot. Not according to your father and Dave. They told the police it was an accident. Dave accidentally shot himself in the leg when he was trying to show Sonia how to use that .380 llama you bought her for protection when you left for business trips. How did they manage this? Your father went out into the yard, shot into the ground, and then came back with a gun and a spent shell casing, which he placed near where Dave fell. And the police bought it? Yes. What about the tires I shot out on my dad's car? I don't think the police even found out about it. Why did they do this? Your father said the business couldn't handle the scandal. Dave wasn't happy. He wanted to set you up, but your father didn't agree. I'm not going back anyway, at least not for a while. If I go back, I'll run into Dad and Dave sooner or later, and I'm sure I'll want to hurt them. Badly. You still need to come back. Your mom needs you, Rob. She needs help with her business. She doesn't need me. She has Dave. Which is absolutely useless. Now that your father isn't around to cover for him, it's clear that he's no good for anything. But you probably already knew that. She was right. I knew that, but he was my family, and it was my father's company, and if he didn't care, why should I? How are you coping? Is everything okay? Stupid question. You know how I do. You're probably going through the same thing as me. I'm sorry I forced this on you. I'm glad you did it. We were going to have a baby. If that had happened, and then I found out what Dave was doing, I would have ended up a single mother. You saved me from that. I told her I would keep in touch, and after disconnecting, I thought about her words. This did not coincide at all with what I heard from my mother. According to my mother, Sonia desperately wanted to talk to me and was almost on the verge of suicide. Not at all like what Cindy said. Desperately trying to talk to me on one side and allowing 2 scoundrels to move in with her on the other. I just shook my head. Incredible. In the morning, I was woken up by screaming and noise outside. I opened the curtains and saw a man pushing a woman so hard that she fell to the ground. He jumped into the car and drove away. I put on my pants and went out to the woman who was sitting on the ground and crying. Are you okay? No, it's not okay, she sobbed. I offered her my hand and she took it. I helped her up. When she stood up, I asked what her number was. I don't have a number. We already checked out and handed over the keys. You can sit in my room and wait for him to come back. He won't come back. I'm gone. It can't be that bad. Oh yeah, maybe. There's no way I'm getting to St. Paul with $40 in my purse. St. Paul, as in St. Paul, Minnesota? Yes, she replied. Okay, I told myself, I know where I'm going next. I looked at her for a few seconds before saying, this could be your lucky day. if you want. What does it mean? I'm heading to Minneapolis, which is pretty close to St. Paul, if I remember. Seriously, are you heading to Minneapolis? Yes. And you're offering me a ride? Yes. She looked at me carefully and then asked, "How can I be sure that you are not a murderer, not an axe murderer, maybe a man who sells white slaves? You can take my driver's license and license plate information and call someone to give them that information. If anything happens to you, they'll know who to look for." She looked at me for a long time, then said, "Are you going to try to have sex with me? Let me put it this way, I won't come to you, but if you come to me, I won't run away." "Pinky oath," she said, extending her right hand. I interlocked my fingers with hers and said, "Pinky oath." As we did this, I noticed the rings on her fingers and wondered what her story was. I guessed that I would recognize her before I took her home to St. Paul. We went to my room, I got dressed and prepared to leave. "By the way," I said, "my name is Bob." "And my name is Mary." I asked her if she had breakfast yet, and she said no, so we stopped at IHOP on the way out of town. Over pancakes and bacon, I asked her to tell me a little about herself. She was 31, married with no children, and an office manager at a law firm in St. Paul. "Was it your husband who went away and left you?" "Yes." "Before we set off, are you absolutely sure he won't come back for you?" "His last words to me were, 'Fuck you, bitch. Even if he comes back, I'm glad I'm not there.'" One of the benefits of working for a law firm is the discount on any legal issues I want them to handle for me. I'll talk to them about the divorce as soon as I get back. Of course, I was curious, but decided not to dig deeper. I was sure that during the long trip I would hear her whole story. Then, of course, she wanted to know my story, so I told it. Your father and your brother, and you didn't kill them. I didn't want to go to jail or get a death sentence for her. Like this, you're going to divorce her, right? I haven't decided yet. Are you seriously thinking about getting back together with her? Oh no, never. I just can't choose between getting a divorce and just leaving. Sooner or later, I think she will want a divorce herself, so why not let her pay for it? In the meantime, I won't pay child support or share everything with her. By then we had finished eating, I paid the bill, and we were on our way. Once on the highway, I asked if she was in a hurry to get home. Why do you ask? It may affect my driving. I usually drive about 700 miles a day. At an average speed of 70 miles per hour, it takes about 10 hours. Since it's almost 2,000 miles, we have 3 days ahead of us. If you need to be home earlier, I'll have to speed up. She thought for a minute and then said, 3 days are coming. 4 or 5 won't be a problem either. She took a book out of her purse and began to read. I turned the radio on to an old music channel and hummed along with the tunes, thinking about what I would need to do when I finally decided to return home. We had been on the road for about 2 hours when she put the book down and said, "I know you're probably wondering what happened back there at the motel, and even if you don't ask, I need to tell someone." I turned off the radio and said, "Come on." Jake and I went to Mexico for a week and met some old friends. We were hanging out and I got so drunk that I passed out. They carried me to our room and laid me on the bed. I don't know how much time passed, but I came to my senses enough to see Jake having sex with Nancy. I drifted into oblivion several times and woke up again to see Nancy pleasuring Jake and then them having sex again. I don't know if you've ever been this drunk, but if you have, you know what state I was in the next morning. I didn't say a word to Jake because I wasn't sure I saw what I saw. My fantasy, drunken dream. My head hurt, my body hurt, so I decided to forget about it. We left home the same day. I should have kept my mouth shut until I got home, but I wasn't smart enough for that. I brought it up this morning and Jake didn't even deny it. He went on the attack. He said that if I was good in bed, he wouldn't have to look for pleasure on the side. When he said this, I realized that Nancy was not the first. When we got into the car to leave, I became stupid again. Instead of waiting until I got home, I told him I was going to talk to a lawyer as soon as I got home. You know the rest. We stopped for the night, and I asked if we should get private rooms, and she said no. I trust you. I wasn't sure I could trust myself. She was a damn attractive woman. There were 2 single beds in the room, and as soon as she got out of the shower, I was already under the covers. I said good night and turned my back to her, after which I fell asleep. I left a wake-up order at the reception, and when the phone rang at 7 in the morning, I woke up. Of course, Mary also woke up, jumped out of bed with the words, "I need to go to the toilet," and ran to the bathroom. I sat on the edge of my bed with a surprised expression on my face. The toilet flushed, and she returned to the room. She was completely naked, and God, what a hot body she had. She saw the expression on my face and said, "Sorry, I should have waited until you used the bathroom and then gotten dressed while you were there. I just sleep naked, and I'm so used to getting up in the morning and walking around naked that I didn't think about what this could do to you. I wish I had a camera to take a picture of you and remind myself that I was once in the presence of the goddess." She laughed and started getting dressed while I went to relieve myself in the morning. We had breakfast at the village inn across the street and then hit the road. We didn't talk much while driving. She was reading her book and I was humming along to the music from the radio. We talked a little when we stopped for gas and lunch, mostly about what we are going to do with our spouses. She knew what she would do, but I was still undecided. When we stopped for the night, I again took 1 room with 2 beds, and just like the night before, I was already under the covers when she came out of the bathroom. She looked at the other bed, then at me and said, "Can I sleep with you tonight? I don't want sex, but I need to be held and caressed. You can do it." I didn't know if I could. I promised her before the trip that I wouldn't molest her, but I'm only human, and I didn't know if I could keep my promise with this stunning naked woman in bed next to me, but I pulled back the covers and she lay down next to me. "Just hold me, please," she said, and I hugged her and held her close. I woke up with my arms around her and her left breast in my palm. I tried to get out without waking her, but as soon as I started moving, she woke up, patted the hand on her chest, then got out of bed and went to the bathroom. At breakfast, she said, "I didn't think you could do it." What to do? Spend the night with me naked and not try to get into my panties. It's the 2 of us. What? I didn't think I could do it either. We arrived in St. Paul at 5:30 in the evening, and I asked for directions. She gave directions, and at one point said, "Turn this way." "Here?" I asked when I saw the Best Western sign. "Yes, here. I want what I didn't get last night. I expected this yesterday. I wanted this yesterday. I just never expected that a man could actually ignore a naked woman in his bed. I know you said you wouldn't pester me, but you wouldn't run away if I started pestering you. Didn't you take the fact that I was naked in your bed as my harassment?" "No, I didn't take it. You said you wanted to be held without sex, and I took you at your word. Well, I'm harassing you now, and I'm not going to run away." I don't know why her husband was running around, but it certainly wasn't because she was bad in bed. She twisted me as she wanted. She took everything I had and still wanted more. When I asked her if she wanted to go home, she replied, "No, I'm going to sleep cuddled up to you, and in the morning I'll try to squeeze it out of you one more time." She snuggled up to me, and we fell asleep. After eating, she gave me directions, and shortly before noon, I pulled up to a ranch-style house with a large front yard. She reached towards the door and said, "Come with me. I think I'd rather stay here." "Why?" "I don't like confrontation." "Confrontation? With your husband?" "Oh no, this is my sister's house. There's no danger of Jake being here. His sister can't stand him, and he knows it." I went inside with her and met her sister Julia, her daughter and boyfriend. Mary explained what happened in Mexico and San Diego, and of course her sister said, "I've always told you what an asshole your husband is." During the conversation, it turned out that I was from Michigan, and Mary encouraged me to tell my story. I got a lot of sympathy, and then Julia asked me if I was going back to Michigan, and I said I hadn't decided yet. It's a pity. If you were coming back, you could save me some money. Like this. Jess and Mike are at the University of Michigan, and if you were coming back, they could go with you and I would save a lot of money on airfare. I really didn't want to go back, but I knew that sooner or later I would have to do it, so why not experience it right away? When were you planning to leave? I asked Jess. We were planning to leave the day after tomorrow. I think I can do it. Mary and I stayed for another hour, and then we left. Already in the car, Mary said, I can't ask you to stay with me, but if you rent a motel room, I promise you won't be bored. I told her I could live with it, and she directed me to a motel near her home. I checked in, grabbed 2 keys, gave one to Mary, and then drove her home. In the evening at 6 o'clock, there was a knock on the door, and I wondered who it could be, since Mary had the key. I opened the door and saw Julia. Can I come in? I stepped aside, and she came in, immediately starting to undress. I know it's cocky, but you'll only be here until tomorrow, and I have to take my chance. Mary said she doesn't mind if I pester you. You don't mind, right? She was at least 15 years older than me, but she was an attractive woman, and as I said, I was not faithful to Sonia, so I pulled Julia towards me, kissed her, and we began to undress. We had sex, and then she came up to me, kissed me, and said, "Thank you," and then left. 20 minutes later, I heard the key turn in the lock, and Mary walked in the door. Julia said she would leave enough for me. Did you leave it? With a little help, I think I can get up. Don't be afraid. Mary knows what to do. And she knew. And when we finished, she said, let's rest, and maybe we'll continue in the morning. She snuggled up to me, and we fell asleep. In the morning, after waking up, which I could not forget for a long time, Mary hugged me and said, I'm glad you're leaving today, and I don't mean that in a bad way. After Jake gets served, I'll have to be as clear as snow to not give him anything he can use to defeat the claim. If you were here, the temptation would be too great. She kissed me goodbye and left. I looked at my watch and saw that I had enough time to call home before taking the kids to Julia's. Good morning, and thank you for calling Dawson and Sons. How can I call you? Good morning, Glenda. Is my mom free? Bobby. Even if she didn't, I'm ordered to connect you to her immediately if you call. Please, please, please tell me you're coming home. Maybe, but it's not certain. I'll bring your mom. 2 rings followed by Bobby. Where are you? St. Paul. Where? St. Paul, Minnesota. What are you doing here? Getting ready to leave and go home. God bless. I need you here to help me keep this place. I said I would come back, but not necessarily to go back to work. Damn it, Robert, I need you here. And how do you propose to separate me and David? You should know that if I end up in the same room with him, I won't be able to stop myself from stalking him. You don't have to worry about it. I caught him stealing from the company and, son or not, I had to let him go. I didn't know what to say about this and was silent for a few seconds, thinking about what I was going to say. This also applies to me. Before leaving, I took $15,000 from the company funds. Although I didn't consider it stealing, I looked at it as a severance package forced on me by my father. Like this pathetic piece of shit, you're talking to me on the phone anyway, so you're not in jail for killing him. I don't know where he is, and I'm not interested in trying to find out. Sonia kicked him and your brother out. You knew they moved in with her, right? Cindy told me the last time I talked to her. I don't know why she kicked them out, but I don't care either. Regarding the money you took, we can fix it later. We'll treat this as an advance on your salary for now, so you'll probably have to pay back some of it when you return. There I had no worries, as the money was virtually untouched, as I was still using what I had withdrawn from our bank account when I left. I told my mom I'd see her in a couple of days, and then drove to Julia's to pick up passengers for the trip to Ann Arbor. Julia greeted me with a warm hug, and then hugged and kissed Jessica, telling her to behave and work on getting good grades. I helped carry Jess's bags to the car and then asked when Mike would be there or if we would pick him up. Mike won't come. We broke up last night when I found out about him and Abby Fisk. I'm not usually an asshole, but given my recent sexual escapades, the first thought in my head when I found myself alone with this sexpot was, oh my God, another notch on my bedpost. By the time we got onto I-94, I had put that thought behind me. We talked as we drove down the highway, and I learned that she was going to the University of Maine on a scholarship to take pre-law classes with a goal of law school. I told her to choose a radio station, but she said she preferred to read and took a book out of her bag. I found a radio station that played country, western, and bluegrass and sang along to the music. I even sang along to some of the melodies. We had been driving for about 4 hours when she asked where we would stop for the night. It is not necessary. It's only 600 miles. We need to get there around 8. But I want to stop. I don't need to be checked into a dorm until the day after tomorrow. Still find a place to stay for the night. Another 5 minutes or so, and then, besides, I want to find out for myself. To learn what? I heard Mom and Aunt Mary comparing notes, and I want to know if what they said is true. What if it's true? That you have a magic tongue and are hell on wheels when it comes to taking care of the ladies. You can't be serious. Yes, my only experience was with boys my age who had no idea what they were doing and no idea how to do what Mama and Aunt Mary say you do. Do you have a kinky side? What? Have you ever wanted to do something unusual? For example, make a mother and daughter? Or how about making all the women in the family? Both my grandmothers died, so the only women in my family alive are my mother and Aunt Mary. And I. I understand you have a kinky side. How do you understand this? I want to try on the man who attacked your mother and your aunt. She smiled and said, you have this. I don't know if I can perform under pressure. Judging by the way you say you're expecting some sexy athlete, and I don't know if I can justify that. My mother is delighted with you, Aunt Mary, and that's enough for me. Besides, with your experience, you must be much better than the 3 I was with. My first time was terrible. It was a week after my 18th birthday that I let my prom date talk me into it. He climbed up, forced himself, came up after about 1.5 meters a minute, and then got off me and said, isn't this great? It hurt like hell, and I wanted to kill him. You have to be better than this. I hope so. The second one was a little better, but not much. Mike and I studied together. What was he doing? He wanted to have special sex with me. He stalked me, and I kept saying no, and last night he got really angry and told me that Abby Fisk let him have sex like that, and it didn't hurt her. By that time he realized what he had just said, that for me he was already history. This is very bad. What's so bad? I don't do women unless they have special sex. A shocked expression appeared on her face. My mother allowed you. And your aunt. Of course, this was not true. Whoa, my mom. Wow, I don't know. A long silence, and then, I think I should try at least once. Another short silence, and then, let's do it. 15 minutes later, I pulled into the Red Roof Hotel. Before getting out of the car to get us a room, I asked, are you sure you want to do this? Yes, definitely yes. Once in the room, I undressed and then slowly undressed her. Then I made love to her body. Wow, I never knew. And Mom let you go. She should have chained you to the bed so you could never leave. I'm already trying to figure out how I can keep you. I had to admit that the praise from the young beauty was good for my ego, but I was well aware that most men who wanted to satisfy their lady would do the same as I did with her. I knew she was comparing what I did to what her young, inexperienced guys did. However, hearing that she was happy with what I had just done made me feel pretty good. In fact, all the ladies I have been with on my travels have made me feel special, and I needed that. Why? Because I had no idea why Sonia cheated on me, As I fled the scene, I had all sorts of thoughts, including, why is she unhappy with me? Was I really so bad in the bedroom that she had to look elsewhere for satisfaction? I doubted I would ever know the answer to that question because I never expected to see her again, at least not to talk. I helped her carry her bags, and then she gave me her cell phone number, kissed me, and told me not to be a stranger. I'll need you. You ruined me. Boys my age will never be able to do this for me after you. Another passionate kiss, and I left the dorm feeling like I was walking on clouds, with "you spoiled me" ringing in my ears. Take this, Sonia. Ann Arbor was only a short drive from Ypsilanti. I checked into a motel and left a wake-up call for the morning. I stopped at a restaurant for breakfast and was at the door of Dawson and Sons when the doors opened during the fight. I still had the keys and could have gotten in, but somehow it didn't feel right. I could knock on the door until someone came and let me in, but the truth was that I was in no hurry to greet what was undoubtedly waiting for me. When George, the security guard, opened the door at 8, he said, "Welcome back." And when I got to the front desk, Glenda jumped up and ran to me and hugged me. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "Thank God you're back. Now maybe we can restore order here." Is Mom home already? In her office. When I walked into the office, my mom looked at me and said, "Why the hell did you come here? There's a foot-high pile of things on your desk that need your immediate attention." I haven't decided yet that I'll stay. Nonsense. This is where you need to be. You can't solve your problems by running away from them. They are waiting for you here. You are needed here, which means this is where you need to be. Now get to work. Can we talk? At lunch. She was right, so why fight it? It wasn't actually a foot high, but it was a big pile, so I dug into it. It was mid-30 when my mother looked into the room and said it was time for dinner. We went to Pegasus, and after we ordered, my mom asked me if I was home yet, and I told her no. I checked into a motel last night. Why didn't you just go home? Because Sonia is there. Sooner or later, you'll have to face her, so why not get it over with? Why are you so insistent that I be with her? Considering what she did to your husband, you should want to see her rot in hell, but here you are, worried about her hurting herself and wanting me to have something in common with someone whom I would like to wrap my arms around her neck and strangle her. This may not make sense to you, but I want my Robbie back, and that won't happen until you leave this whole mess behind. To do this, you need answers to all the questions you have in order to get closure. Questions? Yes, questions. Like, why did she do this? What could I do to get her to do this? How long? Were your father and brother the only ones? I'm sure there are more, but the point is you need to get it all out of the way before you can move on. I knew she was right, but the fact was that although I had questions, did I really want to know the answers? Did she do it because I didn't do it for her in bed? My experiences with Maggie, Mary, Julia, and Jess led me to believe that I was quite decent, but did I relate to Sonia? And why, for God's sake, with my father and brother? I returned to my mom's work and severely crushed the pile of papers on my desk. At 5:30, I left work and got into the car. As I pulled into the parking lot exit and stopped to look both ways to make sure I could pull off, I asked myself, right into the motel or left into the house? I took a deep breath and turned left. Sonia's car was in the garage, so I knew she was at home. I sat in the car, looking at the house, trying to work up the courage to enter. Finally, I shrugged and said, "Do it, Bob, just do it," and got out of the car and walked up the steps. As I reached for the doorknob, the door opened and Sonia stood looking at me. She jumped forward and rushed at me, sobbing, "You're okay, thank God you're okay," and hugged me. I was so surprised by the reception that I just stood there, but then I shook myself off and pushed her away from me. Pushing, I pushed her aside and walked past her into the house. She followed me and cried, "Why did you push me away? I love you." I turned to face her. "You love me but sleep with my father and brother. I wouldn't like to see what you would do to me if you hated me." "You do not understand. I had to do it." "Did you have to do this? I just have to hear it." Go sit at the kitchen table while I pour myself a strong drink. I'll need it to fortify myself against the bullshit I bet is coming. With an iced jack in hand, I joined her at the table. I sat down and said, I don't really want to be here, but Mom convinced me that I would have to face you. I took a sip of the drink I had in my hand and said, Come on, Sonia, tell me. Do you remember Karen's birthday party, the one you couldn't go to because you were out of town? I remember. You told me I had to go even if you couldn't, so I went. Cindy was visiting her sick mother, so Dave was there alone. When he saw that I was alone, he became attached to me. He decided to be my guard dog for the evening. As a guard dog, he sucks. Someone there, and I'm not discounting it for a minute, it was Dave, saw that I was there without you, thought of shooting me, and slipped some kind of sex drug into one of my drinks. My guard dog didn't see it happen, but he noticed my condition when I started to lose orientation. Dave told me he thought it was Kyle Barger because he saw Kyle spending a lot of time around me. Anyway, Dave got me out of there and brought me home. But I don't know if that was really the case because by that time I was already out of my mind. That's what Dave told me the next day. When he brought me home, he undressed me and put me to bed. Then he undressed and got into bed with me. He says he couldn't help himself. He always wanted me and saw a chance to do me and get this away, and I wouldn't know when I woke up in the morning, and while I probably knew I was screwed, I wouldn't know how it happened or who did it. I guess he didn't know much about date sex drugs because while he was having sex with me, I started to come out of it and eventually realized what was happening to me. What I learned later about drugs is that while your mind or brain is out of it, the receptors in your body are not, and when you come out of it, you are already deep in sexual intercourse and all the receptors are active. You are as involved or even more involved than you would be if it were just regular lovemaking. That's where I was when I started to come to my senses. That's where I was when I started to come out of it. I lay there begging for sex. I didn't even realize it was David. That's when your dad came in. He checked on me like you always ask him to do when you're traveling. He walked in, saw what was happening, took out his cell phone, and started taking pictures. At the time, I didn't even know he was there. He took a bunch of photos and then got naked and started having sex with me. Dave came in that day and begged me not to tell you or Cindy what he had done, and while he was there, your father showed up and said he was back for more. When I told him to leave, he laughed. He showed me the photographs he had taken. He said if I treated him right, you'd never see those pictures. How many times? Every time you went on a trip. I looked at her for a few seconds before saying, Karen's birthday was 7 months ago, and I've been on a dozen trips since then. I did the math in my head and said, more than half a dozen. I made 9 trips, including one for Karen's birthday. She turned away from me, and suddenly I understood. I don't know how I knew, but I knew. Damn, Sonia, you kept doing it because you liked it. You loved it, and you didn't want it to stop. That's why you didn't come to me and tell me what happened and didn't believe that I would believe your story. She looked at me with an expression I had never seen before and said, No, I liked it, and I wanted even more than what I got, but I couldn't. I didn't take any chances when you were home. Honestly, I thought that if I only did it when you were out of town, you would never know about it. I fucking loved doing this, but I love you and I didn't want to losing you. Is it just David and my father? No, 3 times your father brought 3 other men. Damn it. This is getting worse and worse. You had sex with several men. You slept with 9 unknown men, and I'm sure you liked it too. I loved it, and it wasn't 9 guys. It was the same 3 every time. Anyone I know, someone I meet every day, who's going to laugh inside when talking to me, an unsuspecting cuckold. No, I think they were just clients your father wanted to impress. I just don't understand, Sonia. You say you love me, but you could do this to me. 7 months during which my father and brother laughed to themselves every time they were with me, knowing that they were turning me into a cuckold, leaving me your scraps. I know all our clients, Sonia. This means that the three men I deal with secretly laugh while shaking my hand. You love me, and you could do this to me. You could have told me that I wasn't doing well in bed, and I would have tried to be better for you. There's nothing wrong with you, honey. We're talking about quantity, not quality. It's not your fault. It's just the way it is. They're assholes, but you let them move in with you. They had nowhere else to go, and in a way I felt responsible for their situation. I could have stopped it after the first time, but I didn't. I let it go on, and because of that, we got caught. When they moved in, I told them there would be no sex. I didn't know if I would ever be able to get you back, but I was sure that I wouldn't stand any chance if I continued with them. One night, they tried to get me drunk to take advantage of me, but I realized what they were up to and made them leave. I had to point a .380 at your father's head to make it happen, but they left. Did you really think you had a chance of getting me back after I found out what was going on? After I saw with my own eyes what was going on? I had hope. I know you and I see it differently, but aside from the sudden shock of discovery, it didn't hurt you in any way. You got all the love and affection you could handle, and your sex life was on top. I have never refused you, and more than half the time I have come to you myself. She paused for a couple of seconds and then said, now that we're on the subject, maybe this could make a great homecoming gift. Maybe, if I were on my way home, but that's unlikely. A distressed expression appeared on her face as she asked, why not? Why would I stay with a woman I can't satisfy? Why would I stay with a woman who will always need multiple partners? I never said that. You always satisfied me. Always. I don't need more than you can give. Yeah, okay, I've learned what I like best, but that doesn't mean I need it. I need you. Take revenge on me if you want. Find yourself a partner and take revenge, but please, please, please come back to me. I remembered my travels and decided to remain silent. I have to admit that I was seduced by her idea of a homecoming gift, and where it will take us, I'll never know because it didn't happen. The front door slammed open, and my brother David burst into the room, leaning on his cane. In his other hand, he held a pistol. I've been waiting for you to come back, you damn bastard. I'll shoot you in both knees and see how you like it. How could you do this to me? What? Did you expect a reward for my wife? I should have killed you. Fuck you, he said, pointing the gun at my lap. No, Sonia screamed, rushing between me and David, just at the moment when he shot. I don't know which of us was more stunned, David or me, but I came to my senses first and attacked him. He dropped the gun, I hit him in the face 3 times, and he fell to the floor. I raised the gun and hit him on the head, and then turned to Sonia, who was lying on the floor. I called 911, then ran to the kitchen and grabbed a towel. She looked at me and whispered, do not leave me. Do not leave me. Please do not leave me. Paramedics arrived along with the police and called another ambulance for David. I think I went a little overboard. He came to his senses several times while I was trying to help Sonia, so I had to hit him with the pistol again to prevent him from getting up. I think this happened 6 times. The situation was critical. My wife was lying on the floor, my brother was beaten, and I was the only one left unharmed. I talked to the police for an hour, but they believed my version of events. Of course, it helped that I turned on the recording function on my phone while walking up the steps. The police had just left when I got the call. Sonia died in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. I suffered for a while. What Sonia did showed me how much she loved me. If she had survived, I probably, no, almost certainly, would have given our marriage another chance. The story made the papers, and about a week later, I came home from work to find Jess sitting on the porch steps. She stood up and hugged me. How are you holding up? Barely. Barely. What brings you here? I saw what my mom went through when she lost her dad. She needed something to hold on to. I thought you'd need someone too. We shared something very nice, so I thought maybe I could support you. This went on for 5 months, and then the day came when she said it was over. She met a guy, a spark ran between them, and she had to move on. Nearly 8 months after the incident, David's case went to trial. He tried to claim that it was an accident and he did not want to hurt anyone, but he could not convince the court and received 20 years in prison. On the day of his sentencing, Cindy called me and asked me for a favor. She wanted me to sleep with her so she could tell David about it later. She was a sexy woman, and I saw no reason not to do her this favor. She had sex with me until she was exhausted, and the next day she went on a date with David and told him about our sex. She didn't get the reaction she was hoping for. Instead of getting angry and calling her every possible bad name, he just sat there and cried. A week later, she came to me again. I need a friend with benefits. Know anyone who might be interested? This continued for another 4 months, and then she received a promotion at work and was transferred to Dallas. Damn, I was sorry to let her go. I seriously considered going with her, but she talked me out of it. I love you, Rob. I'm very happy with you, but I don't love you, and I need to find a man who I will love and who will love me. I'm starting a new life in Dallas, and I hope that I can find what I want there. I need it. My father tried to talk to me several times, but I wanted nothing to do with him. When he died of a stroke, I went to the cemetery for his funeral and made a public scandal in front of about 15 people. I urinated in his grave on his coffin as they lowered it into the ground. While talking with my mother, I learned the names of 3 clients with whom my father was very close. They may not have been the 3 he brought to Sonia, and although I may never know for sure, in my mind I decided that it was them and decided to take revenge on them. Not physically, but I got them through business. They were paying 2 to 4 cents more per unit than our other customers, and the quantity discounts that were offered to others were somehow never offered to them. Not the most significant revenge, but I had to do something. And yes, I know I was an asshole for doing that without knowing with absolute certainty that it was them. Maybe it was just my imagination, but while dealing with these 3, I thought I once noticed a smirk on their faces. Be that as it may, I am human, and like most people, I felt the need to take revenge to even the score. I may have been wrong, but because of what I did, my mental state was better than if I had done nothing. Let karma sort it out. One unexpected result of all this occurred 10 months after I returned home from my travels. I was sitting at home reading the New York Times financial page when my cell phone rang. Hello? Rob, this is Maggie. Do you remember me? I remember. My sister saved your number when you let me call her on your phone. I remember. My sister insisted that I call you. Believe me, I really didn't want to do this. The point is that she insists that you have a right to know. Do you know this? You are the father. You gave birth to twins. Are you joking? Not a bit. You're the only one I've been with. There was a short pause, and then she said, I'm not asking for anything. I only called because Chris insisted it was the right thing to do. 36 hours later, I was knocking on the door of a house in Houston, ready to begin a new adventure. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.